Good afternoon and welcome to another AOPP episode. And I am Dr. Jerry Dreessen, the Executive Director here at the Association of PEMF Professionals. And those of you that are joining us for the first time or you're watching this as a recorded broadcast, welcome. And who we are is basically the melding of PEMF technology and things that are living and how it affects that. And the devices have been around for a long time. More and more people are using them. And you'll see here in this episode, we're going to be talking about the research and how things are done. Let me drop down to there we go. So it's PEMF is moving beyond cellular support, and what we're seeing in the research finally, because as you know, that's what drives the productivity of getting PEMF out there, is what's being done on the research side. And the more research that can be done helps give us all of the information that we need to make that work. And I am just making sure I've got my comment lines opened up. Good. Here we go. So yes, PEMF is moving beyond cellular support, and we've got some slides to show. We'll start with number one here as far as what the big shift is. And research is getting more specific. So back in the as early as last year, the old language, and that's how fast this thing is moving, is that we used cellular support or increases circulation or deals with inflammation. So, which was directionally true, but it was more on the vague side, but it's because we just didn't have all of that dialed in. And so the newer studies that are out there, they target specific pathways. So mitochondrial respiration, the NF-kB MAPK signaling, and I'll show you that definition in just a second. The adenosine receptors and nitric oxide. So we're getting more into the biochemical side of things. And any of you that's had biochemistry and cellular respiration and the Krebs cycle, this is really where PEMF lives. And the more that you can study that, there's so many educational things online, the digital universities. And if you just take a mini course on cellular respiration, you'll be way ahead of the game when you start talking about PEMF. But basically, some of the core pathways, as far as the NF-kB, which is the nuclear factor kappa B, and it's often called the master regulator of inflammation. And so the protein is a complex that controls the DNA transcription. And in normal conditions, it remains locked in the cytoplasm. But when it's triggered by stress or a stressor, it enters the nucleus and turns on genes that drive survival, immune responses, and inflammation. So jumping into another rabbit hole. So Celebrex and Vioxx, they were creating what were called, it was a prostaglandin stopper. So it was a COX-2 inhibitor, so COX. And in the system, there's a COX and an LOX that jump into this and cause this inflammatory response. And so Celebrex and Vioxx, they came up with this COX-2 inhibitor to prevent part of that equation from happening. So there was a COX and an LOX happening. They got half of it, and this buildup of LOX was causing strokes. And so if you go back into the history of COX-2 inhibitors, you know that they got pulled off the market because they were killing people with strokes. Now it's put back on the market, believe it or not, and put in black box warnings. However, the black box warning is not on the package. It's in the container that contains the product. So people are getting re-prescribed these things, not knowing that they are in a black box warning, or sometimes even the healthcare professional giving them out if they didn't do their studies on it. are handing these things out, and I'm seeing patients that are on these for pain. It's like, did you know that's in a black box warning? And they go, no, nobody ever told me. And so the natural way of a COX-2 inhibitor is fish oil. Fish oil is a natural anti-inflammatory if it's taken in a higher dose, and it eliminates the COX and the LOX, which is great, and it does it all naturally, normally. So basically, if you take these 4 components, fish oil, turmeric, resveratrol, and black pepper, all of those will combine and decrease inflammatory response and pain, and it does it naturally. So if you're looking for a natural component, sorry, that was that rabbit hole. We're coming back into this one here. Let's go to MAPK, and it's the mitogen activated protein kinase, which is a naturally occurring event, but it's a series of proteins that relay signals through a chain reaction, and they interpret the mitogens, or the growth factors, and physiological oxidative stresses dictating the cell's decision to divide, differentiate, or undergo programmed cell death, which is apoptosis. And that's, without that cell death, it stays there and does nothing, or it multiplies and does nothing, which is the beginning stages of what a cancer cell does. It's just a cell that doesn't know what it's supposed to do and just keeps replicating. A couple of shout outs here. We've got Joanne, hello. And we've got Stacy. Okay, so Florida, you are representing today. Thanks for being on with us. Let's jump on to the next slide. That was, again, all you, if anything that I talk about today you want to know more about, just drop it into chat, drop it in on your drop it in on your web browser and pull things up. So, I mean, that's the great thing about the web now, is they've got a lot of stuff. However, got to make sure it's the right resources, because sometimes you can get some of the bad stuff in there thinking that it's real, which is why we recommend that you back things up with research, which is what we're doing today. It's part 1 of our part 2 series. So the mitochondria, why this research is getting attention. And let me jump in here real quick. Canada, yeah, Canada. And is PEMF able to be used on cancer? PEMF is really good for certain types of cancer because of what it does, and we'll cover that. I've got a slide for that, especially for that too. And same thing with skin cancer, as far as what it can do. So that's good. Pennsylvania. All right, now we're getting in the middle. And maybe Kathy will, another Kathy that's over here in Washington, she'll pop in and say hi, and then we'll have everything covered up above, to the sides, in the middle. We'll have a full representation here. So, and then also Stacy, yeah, which types can grow from the cancer? Well, we'll cover that. So, again, why the research is getting attention. PEMF selectively stimulates respiration linked to ATP synthesis and influenced membrane potential. So remember, in this cellular respiration, we have this product called ADP, which is a diphosphate, and it, inside the mitochondria, it attaches another phosphate onto that, which turns into ATP. And now you've got the gasoline for the body, and our body thrives on ATP. It also creates some other things here, like nitric oxide, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the mitochondrial function is central to aging, muscle recovery, metabolic health. But don't claim that PEMF fixes mitochondria. Again, it's what we talk about, how we say things. It doesn't fix it. It helps it do what it's supposed to do better, or aids in making it help. It's like having somebody run a marathon and there's a person next to them jogging next to them, encouraging them to take another step. That's another way of looking at it. They don't actually jump in their shoes and run for them. But it's a better language is emerging research is exploring how PEMF may influence mitochondrial activity. More study is needed. That's the lane where we need to stay, because I'll cover this in a second, but I'll just jump in real quick. We need to have devices that are always doing the same thing. So in order to do research, the product doing the PEMF device has to be able to be tuned in to do the exact same thing every time. And that's where research is going, and we are getting some devices that are being designed for that, which is what's really going to kick out a lot of great research as a result of it. So again, inflammation, there's better pathway language for it. So in 2025 Bioengineering Review talked about PEMF suppressed the NF-kB and MAPK signaling. It lowered cytokinin levels and improved extracellular matrix. So they do something, they see a result. And so they still have to make sure that A equals B, and that there isn't anything else in there in the equation that we think A is causing it, but maybe there's something else in the equation that caused it and we just thought it was A. So that's all part of, as you know, the geeky part of research is, learning all these things. So instead of using PEMF reduces inflammation, just say the research is exploring specific inflammatory signaling pathways. And precise pathway language improves credibility with healthcare professionals. So if you can even, in a sentence, utter the NF-kB and MAPK signaling in the mitochondria, you're going to turn some heads for people that know what that means. And if you know what it means, then you can, again, level up who you are in front of people. So let's get a couple of these hellos out of the way. So, hey, we got California. So Brianna, hi. We've got Barbara from, is it Chicora or Chicora? I don't, Pennsylvania, and Stacy's applauding. Oh, hey, look at that, all the way from the UK. Now we're global. All right, thanks. Andy, good to have you on board. And yeah, so as far as being calibrated to make sure that it's providing proper signaling, and you bring up a good point as far as your device being calibrated, so that way it's working the best. Some of the analog ones, it's the pins that come together, and the closer together they are, the faster the sound, the faster the clicking, and then the further out it builds up enough charge to jump across, so it's a bigger transfer of energy. But then those pins, they can go through a little bit of vibration, and over time they need to be recalibrated. So as you're turning your dial, that dial is exactly where that pin is supposed to be. So that's part of the recalibration. If you're digital, I don't think you need to have a digital component changed. But if a digital one goes through and gets the UA listing, and which is thousands of dollars to get that done, but then now that becomes a precise instrument and can be used in research. So that's the whole process, and one of the reasons why we do that too. Let's see here. Is there info you can provide regarding PEMF and cancer, or is it on your website? So again, PEMF has been known to help increase NO, nitric oxide, and nitric oxide has been known to go in and is literally the bowling ball that goes in and breaks up the pins of cells that don't know what they're doing and don't know how to die. So that's the language we use. That's the lane we stay in. And again, there hasn't been enough research on every type of cancer that's out there to make that claim, but we can say in a lab with these things present, we see these results. So, we can't say these things, but we are beginning to put 2 and 2 together, and to be able to reduce tumor sizes and things like that. People that are out there in the field that are using it also know on animals that tumor sizes reduce. Bone, well, we know that bone heals. I mean, that's pretty easy to show on an x-ray, but again, Wendy, you ask a great question, and that's part of the problem is, getting a protocol that's reproducible so that anybody in any lab with any of these devices will get the exact same results. So that's where we stand right now is reproducible events. Yeah, every 500 hours. So again, those of you that have machines that need recalibration, and that's wise to make sure that you're getting the exact amount of PEMF pulse, in the amount of Gauss that's coming out of it, based on where you're setting things, because sometimes that pin may not be able to come close together for a short amount, or just is too far apart, and you're not getting the right hertz or Gauss in your device. So calibration is really important, and the people that sell you their devices will tell you that as well. So the precise pathway language, again, is it improves credibility with healthcare professionals, researchers, and regulators. So the more that you can adopt this language, the more you can help bring PEMF out of the old general things that we talk about and into the kind of the newer language that's recognized by more and more healthcare professionals. Then did it jump? There we go. So in 2025, so as far as pain, stronger evidence, but not a blank check. So again, there are 5 orthopedic sites where they found that PEMF reduced pain 36% versus 10% with standard care, and the pharmacological use dropped 55%. So people are using this to decrease the amount of pain that they're experiencing. And again, there isn't a device that can measure pain. It's subjective. It's like, do you hurt there? No, I don't hurt there anymore. So they went from what? And that's where we use these pain scales from 0 to 10. 10 is the worst pain you've ever felt, and 0 is nothing. Where are you? Some people are like, I don't know what percentage I am. So we draw this line, and believe it or not, it's a centimeter apart. So you have 10 centimeters with just a straight line, and it's like pain and no pain. Where are you? Just draw an X, and believe it or not, it's very similar to as if there were numbers there. When that's what you do is you take your ruler and you bring it up, and you can say it's at 9 centimeter where they put the X, and that's the scale 0 to 10, they're 9. So there's lots of ways to have that pain system set up, but it has to be reproducible. And again, it's subjective. So person next to me sitting there, their pain tolerance may be a 2, and for me, that might be a 9. So anytime you run up against subjective findings, it's really tough to corroborate that as scientific, positive, reproducible outcome. So again, those are some of the things that we have. And then strong support as a non-invasive, non-pharmacological option, but device type and parameters matter. So as you know, there's some devices that are out there that are more therapeutic, and they're very minimal, and there's some that are out there that are powerhouses. And just like Stacy was talking about, we have this tweeter where it can measure the magnetic flux as it comes out, and you can hear it for as far as the range and things, because that's the other part of it is you can have a certain frequency, but how far is it being powered? Is it going into the body? Is it going through the body? Is it going outside? Where is that magnitude, and then from its power source, for every X amount of space you go in a percentage less in power. So it's this decascading effect, I guess. There's other language to use there that I won't use today, because that's, again, it goes into that rabbit hole again. So better language is clinical evidence supports PEMF for certain joint soft tissue pain. Outcomes depend on device, parameters, and care plan. Also, we'll throw in another one, what the subject is doing, what medication they're on, whether it's a human or an animal, how much water they're drinking, whether or not they go right back into the problem that created it. So, if it's a human low back pain and, they work construction, well, they come in and they feel great, but then the next day they're right back doing the exact same thing that hurt them. So those are all of the things that need to be talked about. And as we present our evidence, those are the parameters that need to be included with that. I'm just looking at some of the, Stacy's got another one, L5S1, degenerative disc disease, and the surgeon wanted to diffuse them. PRP injections and MagnaWave, and definitely reduced the pain scale. So again, the healthcare provider you see has a box, and their answer is in that box. It's always good to get 2 or 3 different sets of eyes on things, different perspectives. And PEMF is definitely a device that helps reduce these things. And again, the problem is we can't say that it does it because we don't have the research to back it up. So, and that's always the issue. And then Marie, would an infrared meter be good to have to pinpoint where the pain would be for inflammation to help and where to work on the site better? So there's a couple of things. There's there are devices that do that. Chiropractors actually have a really cool device that shows the difference from side to side on a vertebra to locate the amount of pain. And again, heat is subjective. You're not always going to see heat at the site of pain. Sometimes the pain will shut down blood flow, and so it's going to be less inflamed. But if you have a device that you use that helps you locate the pain, other than having them poke around and showing you where it is, I'm all for devices that help us figure things out. And again, if you've got something that helps show where pain is, and oftentimes to be able to show it afterwards, those are good things too. Heat thermal camera, and that's kind of big too, as far as being able to show that. And again, in our world, chiropractic world, we would take pictures of a spine and show the heat patterns. But again, the person had to be in a room with a neutral temperature for 10, 15 minutes so that the actual reading was what it was going to be. They had to, not have any clothes on for their back to be able to see. So there was a lot of setting up for a thermal image to actually be true, to be able to read it properly. And again, that's when you get into the geekiness of research. Okay, hey, we got a UKer again. Awesome. Thanks. And again, thermal cameras, they may give you an indicator. So if you take a thermal camera on something and you see something that highlights red, you can say, well, this is really red right here. Does that hurt when you touch it? And they say yes. And you go to the other side, let's say it's legs or something, and you don't see any red. Does it hurt over on this side? And they go, no. And it's like, well, the camera's showing this area. And they say yes to that. Well, you've got a device that gives you some feedback. It may not be reproducible because you go to the next person with leg pain, it may not show red there. So that's the issue with using thermal imaging. It's going to be based on parameters, and if they're out in the sunlight versus in a room where they just came to see you from an air-conditioned car, there's lots of things that can happen. So Mariano, as you know, I don't know what you're talking about. I understand every animal that talks to me, and I've got to push me, pull you, just so you know. Yes, right, and I agree. When you're working with animals that can't point and say this hurts, using thermal imaging, and it, so you've got a device that and rely on, and has giving you positive results every time you use it. So, and that's why I don't know what your device is. I don't know who makes the best one, who makes one that isn't right. So again, it's a kind of a buyer beware, but if you've got something that's reliable and it works for you, I have nothing against that. I don't want to tell you, yes, always do this because that's the best, because it may not be. I can't give you that 100% backed by AOPP device recommendation. Yes, and some of us, that are using that. So for me in my clinic, it's what I feel. It's range of motion. It's what they say. So it's my objective findings, their subjective findings, and then. And that's testing with range of motion. That's feeling for spasm and tenderness in the area. So those are things that I write down as a doctor. Let's see here. Hey, Stacy, is it psychic or is it verbal when you're working with the animals? Let's see here. Let's jump on to the next slide. Okay, here we go. So again, better language, clinical evidence supports PEMF for certain joint soft tissue pain. Outcomes depend on device parameters and care plan. And we also talked about what the person's eating, what they're drinking, what medications they're on. Neuropathic pain, the protocol problem is that in a systematic review, clinical evidence remains inconsistent and highly variable across neuropathic pain studies. So I have a patient that came in for the last 5 years. She's had face pain from a breakout that she had in her nerves, and the pain has not gone away. She said you barely touch it and it hurts. And then sometimes, like when I'm adjusting her, she's face down on a table that I have. She'll be face down and it doesn't hurt her. And then she gets up, she starts talking about how it hurts. And so some people have pain, and it just might be because of the gravity causing the pain standing versus being face down and having pain. And remember, sometimes pain, if the signal's been on, it's a class C fiber. If it's been on for a long time, it'll actually burn into itself the on switch. Even though all of the cause and creation for the pain can be gone, but that nerve is now in an on position, and it basically froze itself into that. So getting into that pain fiber and breaking it up and stopping that pain signal. And that's why it's so tough, like what this study's talking about. So the protocols vary widely. Frequency, intensity, waveform, duration, device type, patient population, all of that differs. And my son is a redhead, so I know this for a fact, that they perceive pain differently, which is very interesting. But if we don't document what's done, what device, what settings, then we can't learn from the outcomes. So if you're out there and you're working on something, the more data and check boxes you can do, and then let us see it, give it to us to look at too, then we can grab all of that too and start creating a database of information as well. I mean, that right there, you out in the field doing things is just as important as in a lab, because this is real world and this is everything is pristine. But if there's commonality, like when you do these things, this happens, and in the lab, when it's done this way, this happens, then we can start, putting those two things together and saying, yes, this happens when we do PEMF on this part of the body for this long, and with this protocol. So that's what we're trying to get at, and that's why with, again, we're in the space odyssey where the bone gets thrown into the air and it turns into a space station. That's kind of where PEMF is, where we're going from what is this to holy cow, there's some amazing things going on, and you guys get to be part of that ride. So we're all pioneers in this. Redhead clan. All three of my kids have red hair, but my oldest is a full-blown redhead. Let's see here. Yeah, Stacy, good point. PEMF is so different for every single person and animal. I've seen amazing things, but it's not always the only modality that's needed to fix what's going on. Right? It's part of the plan. It's not necessarily the part of the plan, or it can start things moving towards better things. And I've seen it in my clinic too. Some people, they come in and they use PEMF, and the next day they are the most miserable person ever. And some of you know where I'm getting. I'll ask them, did you drink a lot of water before and after, like you're supposed to? I don't like water. It's like, well, are you drinking any liquid? It's like, oh, I forgot to. So, again, it's the detox that's going on. So I'll say it. If you hurt after this and you're nauseous, that's a good thing, because your body's like dumping out all the toxins that this is, basically fluffing up. You just go through a couple more comments here. Yep. And again, electrolytes. Yes. As you go through your business and you start seeing people with variances, you'll notice that too. But again, the more you do, the harder it is to remember. So that's why it's really important to write stuff down, because you may not remember that thing that happened a month ago, or you may get it mixed up with somebody else. So, and then we would really love it if you sent us your results too. So it's because we're gathering those things in our database. So yes, we would love to have you help us out gathering this information. 2025 study as far as sarcopenia and aging. So again, sarcopenia is the natural progressive loss of skeletal muscle mass, strength, and function that occurs with aging. But the study significantly improved lower limb muscle strength and functional mobility in elderly with sarcopenia. Not every older adult can fully participate. PEMF is studied as a potential supportive intervention. And again, are they wearing an electronic device, pacemaker, hearing aids, TENS unit implants? So, some of that makes it hard too. What's their history of injury? Were they in 5 car accidents? Did they fall off a ladder when they were 14 and damage their hip? Do they have artificial hips? There's all kinds of things in this study, but what it's showing is that it can provide more power. And again, in my opinion, what that means is that the mitochondria is getting powered up and it's creating more energy for them. And then again, more energy means that it can also build more muscle potentially. But again, there hasn't been a study. You have to take a needle and go into the muscle and take a sample out and show whether or not there's more muscle. So, because you can puff up a muscle just with water. Some people that are so dehydrated. And I'll use this phrase too. I said, look, you can go down this road and every day start looking more and more like beef jerky, or you can start hydrating and exercise and keep everything plump and juicy and bouncy and stuff the way it's supposed to be. So, those are some visuals that I do too. Yeah, Stacy, you are talking about something that I have experienced in my clinic. Again, when you're on a high powered machine and it's causing really intense contractions, if you're doing it over somebody or an animal, I don't know how you would tell this, but if they had a disc problem, that compression is going to be squeezing the vertebra together and causing that disc to push out. And I had that happen. And there was another chiropractor that came in and heard about PEMF. And I said, yeah, it's great. It'll help you out. And I said, whatever you do, don't turn this up. You might think more is better, but don't do it. And I had it on just really light and over his low back, right over where his herniation was. And we talked about this, and he knew enough to know not to do this. But I was working on some patients, and I came back. He had turned it up, and his muscles were contracting, and I hit the off switch. I said, what are you doing? He goes, it felt really good. I just wanted to get a little bit more. I said, no, we need to stop, because even in a bulge disc, if there's just a pinhole in the disc, it's going to ooze out some of that liquid, which is like battery acid on your nerves. And he came in 2 days later, and he said, I just want to let you know. He goes, I'm really sorry. He goes, I bumped it up, and you told me not to. And he goes, now I'm having a hard time walking because it irritated his system and created more inflammation. So it does happen, and you have to be careful. And the people that are using it need to listen to you. If you've got a device that has a dial on it, maybe put a steel box over it so that they can't reach over there and turn it, because it needs to be left where you set it. So again, frame what we're talking about with this as far as the muscles as emerging supportive research, but it's not a replacement for exercise, nutrition, physical therapy, or medical care. So it is part of the package, right? It is the provolone to a delicious pizza, but you can't just eat provolone on its own. So I apologize for those of you that are lactose intolerant. So 2026 again, Parkinson's and neurological research. So the clinical biomechanics studies that long-term transcranial PEMF slowed tremor frequency changes towards healthy values, which is promising because it used objective EMG measurements, not just post PEMF Parkinson work from the research group. So they were able to do this protocol always the same, and then they were able to test before and after and see a change, which is, again, that's the type of research that we need. And so again, what we're talking about is that independent replication is needed before any broad clinical claims are appropriate. So this work came from just one research group, and that's often a problem because another research group needs to set it up exactly the same and get the same results. And that's when you start getting all of these, clinical outcome studies that are showing the same thing. So if you have somebody with Parkinson's and you do a transcranial PEMF, you can quote this, research that they've shown some positive outcomes with the EMG measurements for people that are using PEMF. And again, the brain can't feel anything, so you have to be careful with your power. But I would always, as we say, low and slow, and more is not better, especially when you're working with the brain. And if the brain starts to detox, you can have some headaches going on too. So those are all important things to consider. Highest level, that's a great question. What's the highest power level I would use on the back with a bad disc? If your device, for example, if it's got a 1 to 10, I would be at a 2 or a 3. And instead of like at an 8 or 9, this 2 or 3 would be like with my machine. Mine's a pretty powerful machine, but I would do 10 to 20 minute sessions 3 times a week, and do that for 5 to 6 weeks, kind of like physical therapy, 2 to 3 times a week, 8 weeks. That's how I would use PEMF. And I would be using outcomes as far as how they're feeling before and after, some range of motion tests, and again, how they sleep. But have water there, have them drink water before, have them drink water after, and just let them know. It's a very, I'd rather have you go into this mild and get great outcomes than to overdo it and have you have a couple of setbacks because we went too far. Next slide number 9. Here we go. Oncology support as far as the highest caution category. And this is getting back to our talk about cancer. So in 2026, PEMF reduced post-radiation skin damage severity in breast cancer patients undergoing radiotherapy. So as far as on the supportive care side, managing side effects is not the same as cancer treatment. So never blur that line. This helped with the leftover from the treatment protocol. We can't say that it helped reduce the cancer. It just helped reduce the inflammation as a result of that. But any oncology-related PEMF discussions belong within the medical care and licensed oncology team oversight. So you can talk about this study, but you can't put your own spin on it, because that's the medical side. You can have a discussion with them, say, wow, what do you think about this, study when it, was used, and, managing the side effects. Those are some things that are good. Again, we have all seen great things happen with humans and animals using this, but we weren't, that exact same situation. That's part of the problem too. Does that exact same situation exist? It might be in a different place, might have a different blood flow, might be only there for a week, might have been there for 3 years. Those are some of the parameters that are needed with research. What caused it? Was it a blow? Was it a hit? Was it nutrition? Was it genetic? Did it, everybody in the family has this, but PEMF helped it. It's just, again, I think you see that I am a repeating record on all of these things. And then takeaway parameters. So again, as I talked about, track everything, what the client goals are, the device, the settings, session length, frequency, outcomes, referral of things, and then scope boundaries. So, the more definitive you can get on the things you track, the better research it is. So the future of PEMF credibility depends on becoming more precise, not only in research, but in on-the-field documentation, and then also marketing and scope. So, as we were talking about in that very first slide, what it does, in fact, I'll go back to it here. As far as this specific research, where we're talking about cellular support, increased circulation, and decreasing inflammation, they're still okay to use, but it's more on the vague side. But now you can talk about how the mitochondria is affected and how that reduces the mitochondria's pushing the red button, intruder alert, system alert, and how it helps reduce the body's emergency system from going on and creating those things. And then as far as our perspective, again, new studies should be used for education, not over-promising. So avoid diagnosis, treatment claims, or disease claims. And those are really good questions I'm looking down here. Stacy's asking, like, can PEMF help with MS? Well, okay, again, multiple sclerosis, what's going on? So you've got in your spinal cord, you've got these tracks, and like your left side track, goes to the nerves coming out, but there's also, it goes to the internal organs and the spinal, which is the posterior columns on the spinal cord. I'm doing a cross section and looking at it. So you can have this sclerosis or hardening of this pathway, and that's why you got the inability to use it, or you got spasm going on, and then like within a week that goes away and it shows up somewhere else. So you've got this multiple sclerosing going on in the spinal column, creating all of these different things, and it can be different levels. It could be just in the thoracic area, so you have problems with your chest muscles or your arms, or it could be down low into the lower part of the spinal column, so you have problems lifting your legs or your feet. And then the next month it could be gone from there because that healed basically, but it's showing somewhere else. Does PEMF help that? The question is, does that mitochondrial reboot in the area of the sclerosis help the body decrease that sclerosing? And until we answer that question, like what causes the sclerosing to begin with, we can't answer that question. If people who are using PEMF with MS feel relief, that's vague, but it's still a good outcome. Why it happens, we don't know. And so, does it cure MS? Does it help with MS? I like to use the phrase, I have some people with MS that have used this, and of the 10 that are using it, 8 are noticing a difference, which is super vague. But again, it takes you away from guaranteeing that if you use this, your MS will be gone. I don't know anybody who would say that, but again, you're looking for major liability because this person is now going off of your promise. And so that's one of the biggest lawsuit systems that are out there, is promising a cure and not being able to do it. And then the person like stops everything else that they're doing because they're following you and your claim that you can cure them. So that's why we're taking I can cure you and not putting it in any lane for anybody when it comes to PEMF. It's all based on outcome, which is where we want you to live. And let's see here. So Stacey's talking about parasites. So I've seen that research too. So if you have a parasite that is like in your spinal column and it's like pushing stuff around and then it leaves and it goes somewhere else. Spirochetes, which are corkscrewed, so they go through everything. They're not limited by tissue walls and things like that. Again, there's not enough definitive research to prove that, but again, some people who have MS have had parasites, but who's to say? Again, is it an all or nothing, or it's like, well, here's one type. Again, now you're getting into the science that everybody lives in. It's like, what's going on? And what we have seen as far as detoxing parasites, there have been studies that show that PEMF, I talk about spirochetes like syphilis, it's a corkscrew, and there's other types of spirochetes that are out there. And this system that they use to spin, that's why they can evade our white blood cells, because they're too fast. They're just like these propellers things just shooting through the body. And the white blood cells are trying to get to it, but for phagocytosis and chew it up, they can't catch them. They have found in some studies that PEMF paralyzes the spirochete's ability to move, which slows them down so that the immune system can get to them. So that's how that works. And I don't know how old that study was, but those are some of the things that I saw too that is very promising. Yeah, I know. It's pretty ironic. We can cure you. No, we can help your body cure itself up to a point, and our cure is either going to help things out or it's going to create a toxic environment. So yeah, that's always been the talk amongst the professionals. Like, was it a cure, or did the body do it regardless of what you did, or did you slow things down and hamper it because now the body has to take over the toxicity that was created from the unnecessary need for certain things? And so that's kind of where we are with medicine right now. And again, way back in the day, it was microdosing, and then, which is kind of the homeopathic stuff. And then they got into macrodosing, which is like, let's just overwhelm the system, which is where a lot of allopathic medicine is now. It's like, let's just get in there and bombard the system and just kill everything. And then at least we killed what was in the center of it. Now all the other tissue that got harmed from it, now we got to create medication to help from the harm that we did. And so, again, I believe, as well as those of you that are watching this, that the more natural you can get, and help energize the body so that it can do what it's supposed to do better, I think it's the better route to go. Stacy, you're asking a ton of great questions. So you can get depleted of zinc because your body is detoxing. Well, remember, the whole process of detoxing are the cells grabbing stuff and getting rid of it. And all of that, needs energy, it needs nutrients. And the metals that our body uses, potassium, zinc, magnesium, all of those things are needed. And if your body is working overtime, can get depleted. And we talked about electrolytes. Those are all things that are needed. So not only is zinc get depleted, but all the other nutrients our body uses too. So it's always good to have a really good, healthy multivitamin to have on a daily basis. But when your body's like tanking, it's also detoxing. It's good to stay on top of that too. So that's where that's where the lane that I live in. And yeah, Andrea, the power that makes the body heals the body, and we all have an innate ability to stay and be healthy, provided that's not being limited somehow. So the more that your body can express its true ability to heal itself, the better. PEMF does help with that, just like good, solid, clean food does. The less you can stay away from the toxic environment, the better you're going to be. And again, now on the mitochondria side, there's lots and lots and lots of great research being done on that. So, like I said, if you can get out into a online university and learn about biology, learn about Krebs cycle. If you're doing PEMF, that's definitely the lane you want to be in, is learning about, PEMF and ADP into ATP, nitric oxide. We didn't really touch about that much today, but it'll be in the future. And it's also in past broadcasts as well. But again, with that, thank you very much. I I'm going to end today's talk, and it's been wonderful talking with you. And again, if you liked what you saw, make sure that you send out to us your information and like and follow our channel. So thank you very much. I went really long today, but I think it was well worth it. And it was great talking with each and every one of you too. So thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you next week.